Do you ever feel like your 9 to 5 is sucking the life out of you and you're just working to survive? But then there are other moments where you're doing work, but it doesn't feel like work at all. It feels like flow and creation. As light workers, we didn't come here to the planet to just work our lives away to some corporation. We came here to create and to bring light into the world. And today I'm going to show you the difference between work and creation so that you can bring more of that inspirational creation into your business and your life. Hi, I'm Dr. Kara, PhD, over 10 years working in Silicon Valley, and a trained mystic. I've built a 6-figure spiritual business, but I also know the grind of a 9 to 5 corporate life. I've lived on both sides, the slog of just working because you have to pay the bills, to that magic of creating from your soul, which actually is a very important topic that we're going to dive into in this video. If you're tired of dragging yourself through your job every day, wondering why it feels so draining, it's not because you're broken. It's because much of the 9 to 5 model is based on production, which is actually a form of enslavement, not creation. And as light workers, many of us came here to create, to literally bring more light into the world, not just punch a card and get a paycheck. And interestingly enough, we also call this light work. So we're going to dive into all of these terms and definitions so that you can better understand how to create from that place of inspiration of bringing more light into the world. Because let's be real, you are here to do bigger and better things, not just, let's say, pay to live on the planet and that's all you do with your life. In this video, I'm going to help you understand the difference between work that drains and work that energizes you. I'll also help you spot where you're already using this powerful creation energy, even if it doesn't feel that mystical or significant to you. And finally, I'll show you how to bring more of that creative energy into your life and your business. So it doesn't just feel like you're slogging away at work, but creating your work from a place of light, high frequency, and inspiration. Step 1. Let's first redefine the difference between work and creation. Let's first look at the definition of work. Oftentimes when we hear this word, we think of things like obligation or output or ticking boxes. It's something that we as adults often do. We work a job or we go to work. It's literally a place or an action that we do. There's also the scientific definition of work, but we're going to ignore that for a moment. Basically, we are using our energy to influence and interact with the world in some way. Oftentimes, when we talk about work in this typical definition, we're generally talking about working a 9 to 5 job or having some kind of paycheck exchange so that we can pay our bills and live on the planet. For many people, work equates to a job, a type of employment, or maybe you even work on your business or find work in different ways to earn money. Now, when we look at the word creation, it often has a very different connotation. We think of it as being a state of flow or expansion or this amazing elusive trait that we try to tap into, especially if, let's say, you're an artist or a writer or a musician. You create music, you create art, you create a book, right? It totally has a different connotation to it, even though in some ways we could consider creation work, well, work. So both work and creation exist, and they have their roles and their benefits. If we think of work in the traditional sense of working a job or earning some type of paycheck for us to make ends meet, well, oftentimes we have to do work in a production sense. We're helping usually a company produce some kind of goods or services that we exchange for money. Most of the jobs that exist on the planet are generally done from a point of enslavement. Let me back up for a sec. So when we go to school, especially in Western society, we are put into government schools because we are literally being trained as children to become good workers. We are taught how to follow orders, sit still, listen, and just think enough where we can work the factory or push around papers, but not think so much where, let's say, we're reinventing new roles of society or forms of government. This is why we have a lot of norms and practices in traditional Western education that are essentially the stepping stones to becoming good worker bees. In other words, Going to school is a type of brainwashing. And believe me, that was a tough pill to swallow because I literally went to school longer than most people with a PhD and spent a majority of my life teaching in the traditional educational system. Yeah, about that. So take it from me. Most educational systems in Western society are geared towards helping people become good workers, not necessarily business owners or creators. But don't get me wrong, work has its place in society. It's because we have things like jobs and work production that we can enjoy the fruits of the human collective in the paradigm in which we experience life. For example, you are watching this video on probably some kind of mobile phone or computer desktop or laptop. All of those were put together because, well, people around the world worked. And so far, this is a way in which we structure ourselves in our society to produce and get things done. So it does have a role. I'm not saying that work is all terrible, but there is an inherent energy behind the structures of society around work and even education to promote people into the work system, because at the end of the day, it is a form of enslavement. We're often giving our power away to earn money to pay to live on the planet, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. I mean, a dog doesn't have to pay to live on Earth, or a tree. Why should we? Now, here's the thing. Most people do live in a Western society that, enjoys the benefits of what that society brings, like entertainment, having food on the table, shelter to live in. So this isn't necessarily a slight on all that. It's just because of the nature of broader economic and socioeconomic decisions that have happened at a collective level, well, as a result, many of us work in capitalist societies to promote that system to continue. This is oftentimes why a lot of people, if you are working a job to earn a paycheck to pay your bills, it can feel really restrictive or like a slog, or that you're just chasing another dream that you'll never achieve or never get. And this can often lead to burnout and other types of work exchange that isn't always fully satisfying. For example, if you are working in a corporate job somewhere or you're in the services industry, it can sometimes get tedious to just do the same thing over and over again for some elusive paycheck that promises to help make you happy at the end of the day. Now, the key to addressing this is to redefine and also reevaluate how you define work and your relationship with work. For example, I have worked in a corporate job for almost 10 years in Silicon Valley, and my relationship with this work has changed drastically over the years. When I first joined the company, I was so inspired. It was mission driven and it was all about helping people to better their lives through education. And not just normal education, but education that anyone around the world could access with their phone or a laptop. And you could learn skills that could, help you get a job to improve your life. Because oftentimes economic opportunity and having access to economic opportunity is often driven by education. And that just felt really inspiring when I first joined straight out of college. So for years, work to me didn't necessarily feel like work. I felt really energized and excited to participate in this amazing co-creation to help bring education to as many people around the world as we could. On the other hand, when I was in this company, let's say 5-6 years in, things started to feel redundant. If you've ever worked at a corporate job for a long time, or you're in a tech company in Silicon Valley, things can move quickly and get really exhausting, oftentimes due to changing priorities, changing technology, changing teams, and gosh, it can just really wear on you after a while. So in this case, work shifted from this creation energy into the slog of work. But I realized that literally the job was the same. What changed was me and my energy. So about midpoint through my career in this company, I realized that I had to change my attitude if I wanted to continue, not just in keeping my job, but also to shift this energy from, let's say, giving away my power and feeling defeated and burnt out all the time to instead feeling inspired and creative and involved in working with others. So that's where creation came in. And this leads to step 2. You need to integrate creation into your work. Even inside your job or your business, you can reframe really simple or mundane or complicated tasks that you don't find enjoyable into opportunities of creation. So when I was, let's say, 6 years into this corporate job and it started to feel more like a chore of work rather than inspirational like it did at the beginning, I realized that I had to change my mindset and reframe how I was approaching my day-to-day. So for example, rather than going through my job of like, oh, here's just another day, I decided to change my thinking and look at my work as an opportunity to learn new skills, to connect with others, and to even apply my mystical lightworker practice into my corporate job. So for example, as a mystic, I have learned that mysticism at the end of the day is all about connection. It's literally connection with yourself, your body, with other people, and with your environment. And the more connected we are at an energetic and frequency level, well, the more powerful we become and the more successful and able to do we become. So when I started to manage teams, lead meetings, create new projects, I had to change my thinking to this perspective of creation, but also with a mystical lens. In other words, how could I run a team in a high frequency way that enabled people's autonomy, but also shifted them towards a larger co-creative goal that, let's say, met company objectives. Now, although businesses, at least in the classic sense, are very hierarchical in nature, which in a lot of ways is power over others, and literally people are more powerful than you because they're above you in a pyramid type of way, that doesn't mean you can't bring light and high frequency practice into your work. So I decided as a manager to connect with people at a more authentic and real level. Usually this is very practical. It means talking to people and asking them about their family, how they're doing, what they're inspired by, where they're blocked. Actually connecting with the person at a level that goes beyond superficial deadlines and work tasks. And what I found is that by connecting with people and being the light, literally not getting triggered at work, being a voice of, let's say, high frequency in really tense work situations, I actually saw a direct impact on not only the people I manage, but the work that we created. In corporate jobs, it is so easy to fall into victim-aggressor cycles. In other words, to blame people for your problems, or to get really mad at someone because of a decision you didn't like, or to just spread gossip and talk crap about people. And I have fallen for all of that, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, it's not what a light worker should be doing. That is actually feeding the dark and the negative energies on the planet, not the high frequency ones. I also saw that the way in which I sent messages or emails had totally different results depending on the energy of creation that I put behind them. So for example, if I'm going to send a Slack message or an instant message to my boss and I'm in a really triggered state, guaranteed that she's going to feel that and understand that I'm triggered, even if it's at a subconscious level. However, if I process my trigger or decide to, let's say, not send a reactive message in fear, anger, or righteousness, but instead post a mature response that is in integrity and also very clear and, well, filled with light, that's going to have a very different impact, not only on her, but maybe the entire project and the whole company as a result. So there are so many ways that you can integrate creation into your work. Now, if you're a business owner and not necessarily running a typical 9-to-5 corporate job, this still applies to you in every way as well. As an entrepreneur, I know how there are just tasks that you have to do as a business owner that you might find challenging, boring, redundant, or you just don't want to do it. But it still has to be done because, well, it's got to be done. For example, you still got to pay taxes or run payroll or research that new thing. Sometimes it's not always stuff you want to do or things you're not necessarily inspired or skilled at doing, but they still need to be done. This is where things can start to feel like work in your business and not necessarily from a space of inspiration and creative flow. But there are probably some areas in your business that you do feel that inspirational creative flow because, well, you probably wouldn't have started a business if that wasn't the case. So it's the same concept. If you are a business owner and you are looking at a bunch of tasks and projects that you just have to do from a work perspective, well, there's a couple things you can do strategically. You can hire other people to do it. You can reframe your thinking and see what you can learn from the situation and grow your skills about, or you can infuse that project or that task with light and just do it from the perspective of a lightworker. For example, something like a spreadsheet can be approached as a piece of light creation because it will bring clarity, flow, and structure to your business. Or let's say a post of content for social media could actually be a spark of light for the algorithm or for someone else who's viewing it. There's a lot of ways that you can integrate that creation energy into your work. So get creative and find ways that you can do that. It might require you to reframe your thinking, maybe even getting honest with yourself about where you're indulging in low frequency energies. And generally, whether you're working a job or running a business, you're probably doing it somewhere because we're all, guilty of falling for that. But that doesn't mean we have to keep doing it. The more we catch ourselves not stepping into those negative indulgences like drama or blame or getting really mad at someone, then we're actually shifting into the light paradigm and instead bringing that beautiful, pristine, creative energy into the world because we are choosing instead to respond in high frequency, joy, kindness, or simply curiosity and inspiration. And now for step 3, give yourself permission to create more. Now, as a lightworker, there's probably some kind of activity or hobby that you have in your life where you just love doing the thing. Think of this as your sacred time where you step into a different flow of energy and you just allow yourself to express and to create. Now, it actually took me a really long time to figure out what my inspirational creative process was because I'm not an artist, I'm not a musician, and a lot of these creative activities that we often assign to, let's say, creative arts didn't necessarily apply to me in the way that I thought. But then I realized that I'm actually creating all the time, especially as a business owner. I'm creating social media content. I'm creating new graphics. I'm creating courses. I'm creating articles. I'm creating videos. I'm creating so much content all the time. And that's really no different than, let's say, an artist painting on a canvas or a musician creating a song on their keyboard. But I know that I didn't often give myself that permission or even that allowance to create because it didn't necessarily fall into the traditional definitions of creativity. But once I started to think differently about this and give myself permission to actually create, things started to change a lot. In fact, when I was first starting my business, I approached it primarily in this work mindset where I have to do things to get my product up on the website or get things running in a way so that's all automated, right? And it felt like the same slog that, let's say, a corporate job can feel like. However, when I removed a lot of those expectations from myself and my business, and I just gave myself permission to create, things really started to shift. I found that I started to enjoy the work process. For example, I realized how much I actually enjoyed creating content for social media or going into the writing process in great detail and writing articles and newsletters. I also found myself enjoying creating graphics and ads, and I always was terrified of ads because I thought they were work in this really negative way, when actually it's just another expression of creativity that you're sharing with other people around the world. One of the best hacks I've had is to give myself and set aside time on my calendar to actually step into that flow state and allow myself to create. So create sacred time for yourself to create. Block off your calendar, Give yourself a good chunk of time, like at least 1 to 2 hours, where you can really go deep into a creative process and just see what comes up. Now, generally, this probably will vary depending on your interests or the type of creative work that you like to do. But if you're like me and you don't necessarily know, well, just give yourself permission to explore and don't be so constricted about how one might define creativity. When you're creating your work out of this energy, it literally infuses all of the work that you're doing. So whether you're putting data into a spreadsheet to analyze later, or you're creating a beautiful image for a social media piece of content, or writing an article to your newsletter audience, all of this creation flow is going to infuse your words and your energy of the work that you're creating. And that leads me to step 4, understanding that we as humans are a creator species. When I was undergoing my mystical training, I learned that humans are actually a very unique species in the universe because we literally create. And that creation spark happens because we are literally two beings. We are a soul, which literally comes from another universe, and we are also a physical body elemental. And together we have a symbiotic, joined experience of two beings becoming one as human. This is why most cultures around the world will talk about the soul being different than the body. It's because there is this innate knowing that we as humans come from somewhere else. And yet at the same time, our bodies are also from here, this physical universe. For whatever reason, two universes coming together, colliding in this spark of viewpoint that is us, is incredibly powerful. It's actually the reason why all of these forms of enslavement were put into place on the planet. This planet specifically, Earth. It's because a lot of beings at both an ultra-dimensional and physical level will take advantage and harvest that creative energy that humans have to literally create realities. Our forms of agreement and our intentions and actions literally create world, and we're incredibly powerful. And this is why we have a dark light paradigm on planet Earth. It's because many years ago, there was an agreement to have an experiment where we allowed certain experiences like power over others, victim aggressor, martyr savior, to come into this reality matrix and play with, well, the dark. Now, this is a whole topic for another time. In fact, if you're interested in this work, I highly recommend you check out my teacher and my mentor's work by Anelia Benz. She goes into great depth about how all of these machinations work at a reality matrix level. But just know that as a human being, you are incredibly powerful. And that is because you are a creator. And as a light worker, your mission and your role is to literally bring in the light into the planet. It's because we're moving out of this dark light paradigm experience back into the configuration of light only paradigm. And for us to do our job, well, we gotta do some work. In other words, that's why we call ourselves light workers. We do have a job to do. And sometimes we have to do things that might be hard or challenging, or we might not always find beautiful and inspirational. At the same time, that is a creation process. A lot of your light worker work can come through your literal creations, whether it's art, music, writing, creating businesses, teaching others. There's literally unimaginable ways in which we can express creation. But the most important part is that you create through that frequency of light. So whether you're working a corporate 9-to-5 job or starting your own business, know that how you create your work is really important as a light worker. As you shift your energy, so does your work. Things become easier, more clear, and also just kind of resolve themselves if we're operating from that state of flow and inspiration. And suddenly you're not dragging yourself through the grind, but instead you are channeling your mission into form. If this video helped reframe work for you, then hit subscribe and join me every week as I share high frequency business strategies and mystical tools that you can use to help you build a life that you love. And if you know a fellow lightworker who's stuck in the grind, then share this video with them. They need to hear it too. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!